All right, so we're diving deep into how this huge war finally ended.
Yeah,
The clash between the overworld, the nether, and the end. And
exactly.
I think our listeners already know, like, the basic setup, right?
Like,
We got the tension, the whole deal with Souls and Cores,
uh-huh.
the M4 project, Project Cygnix.
Yep, all that.
So let's just skip to the good part.
Let's get to it.
How did this whole thing finally wrap up?
Well, the end of the war is
Yeah.
really interesting and kind of complicated.
Okay.
You see the overworld and the nether, they only had like 10 years to
Right,
get
sure.
ready for the Ender Dragon's attack.
Yeah.
But time, in the end, it's different.
Okay. Yeah, I remember something about that.
Yeah.
Like some kind of time warp, right?
Exactly like a time warp.
So how does that actually work?
So for every year that passes in the overworld or the nether,
Uh-huh.
5 years pass in the end.
Whoa.
So while everyone else was, rushing around for a decade,
Right.
the Ender Dragon, she had 50 years to prepare.
60 years.
50 years.
That's a huge head start.
It's a massive advantage.
No wonder she was able to launch such a powerful attack.
Exactly.
But what did she actually do with all that time?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
She used that time to really perfect her power warp
Right.
on her entire civilization.
Wow.
So imagine like an army that doesn't just follow orders,
Uh-huh.
but acts as one mind.
Okay.
Like every soldier, every citizen totally in sync with the Ender Dragon's will.
So it's not just about numbers then. It's about, like, strategy and coordination.
Absolutely.
That must have been terrifying to fight against.
Oh, absolutely. A hive mind army.
Yeah.
They could predict your every move,
Right.
exploit every weakness.
And while this was going on, the overworld and the nether are just trying to get their own forces together.
Right. They were struggling.
Which weren't nearly as unified.
Nowhere near as cohesive.
Yeah.
So they're facing this relentless force.
Just unstoppable.
The Ender Dragon's warped army was adaptable, coordinated, completely devoted to her.
So, okay, we've got this super powerful hive mind army coming out of the end.
Right.
And the war lasted for 3 years in the overworld and the nether.
Yeah.
But what was that like from the end's perspective?
Well, for them, it was a 15-year war.
15 years.
15 years.
Wow.
It was a brutal conflict, just never ending.
Yeah.
It pushed everyone to their absolute limits.
I can imagine.
And in the end, it forced the gods Thog and Elefin
All right.
to make a truly devastating decision.
What was that?
They realized that the only way to stop the Ender Dragon
Yeah.
was to completely cut off the connection between the realms.
So they sealed the portals to the end.
They did.
But those portals were supposed to be super stable, right?
Incredibly stable.
Like almost impossible to close.
It required an immense sacrifice.
What do you mean?
Thog and Elfin, the gods of war and life,
Yeah.
they gave their lives
To close the portal.
to close the portals.
Wow.
They wove a powerful spell using their very life force
That's incredible.
to sever the connections between dimensions.
So they gave up everything to protect their realms.
They did.
That's incredible.
A true act of selflessness.
But wait, if the portals are closed,
Yeah.
does that mean the Ender Dragon's trapped? Like, game over?
Not quite.
What do you mean?
Well, the portals are closed,
Right.
but the Ender Dragon's influence, it hasn't completely disappeared.
So she can still do things.
Warp isn't limited by physical boundaries.
Okay.
Even though she's trapped in the end, she can still exert some control over those she's warped.
Wait, so even though the portals are closed,
Yes.
she can still manipulate people in the overworld and the nether.
It's possible.
But how? How could she do that if the portals are closed?
Think of it like a radio signal.
Okay.
You can be far away from the source, but you can still pick up the transmission.
If you have the right receiver.
Exactly. And in this case, the receiver
Yeah.
is the warp connection the Ender Dragon made with certain individuals.
So you're saying there could be people out there right now,
It's possible.
still under her influence,
Potentially.
carrying out her will without even knowing it.
That's the unsettling thought, isn't it?
That's chilling.
And it's why it's so important to understand
Yeah.
the true nature of warp
Right.
and how the Ender Dragon might be manipulating things.
Because even though the portals are closed,
Yes.
this war might not be over.
Not really.
That's a scary thought.
It is like a puppeteer,
Oh, yeah.
controlling their puppets from far away.
The strings are invisible,
Exactly.
but they're still there.
The influence is undeniable.
So even with the Ender Dragon sealed away, in the end,
Uh-huh.
we could be seeing her plans playing out right now
It's possible.
and not even know it.
That's right.
So what kind of things could she be doing?
Well, the possibilities are pretty much endless.
Okay.
Imagine like sleeper agents
Super agent.
in positions of power,
Okay.
subtly influencing decisions
Right.
to create chaos,
Yeah.
weaken defenses.
So you're saying we could have these warped individuals right here in the overworld and the nether,
It's not out of the question.
and they're pushing the Ender Dragon's agenda.
It's like something out of a spy movie.
This has been a wild deep dive.
It has.
We started out talking about how the war ended,
Right.
and now we've uncovered this whole new battle.
A hidden war.
That's just as dangerous
Possibly even more so
than the war that came before it.
because you can't see the enemy.
Right. Yeah.
You don't know who to trust.
And it's happening everywhere.
The war might be over.
But the fight continues
It does. And it's a fight we can all be a part of.
by staying informed,
Informed.
vigilant,
Vigilant.
and connected.
Connected.
So to everyone listening out there,
Yeah.
thank you for joining us.
We appreciate you.
Remember, knowledge is power.
It really is.
And by understanding this threat,
Yeah.
we can be better prepared to fight it.
We can resist it.
So stay curious, stay vigilant, and stay connected.
We'll see you next time.
Until then, keep your minds sharp and your hearts strong.
Take care.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive. All right, so get this, everyone. Today we're going to be looking at cottagecore communism lore, specifically Chapter 1.
All right.
And the really fascinating chapter, we're going to be talking about goblins and wyverns and warping and all this other stuff. But really, it's about the characters.
Yeah.
It's the character interactions that really makes this chapter come to life.
Yeah.
And so you ready to go through all this?
Absolutely. I think Chapter 1 is such a good setup for the rest of the story because it shows how the war's aftermath is still really affecting everyone.
Yeah, and it's not just what happened. It's how it continues to affect people.
Right.
And how it kind of, colors their perceptions of the world.
Yeah.
And each other. So let's start with the Heartlands, where this all takes place. We got these 4 key locations that are kind of like, they're almost characters themselves.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. So
Yeah.
first you have the Drifts, right? That's kind of like a bustling resource hub. It was
Ah.
founded by this M4 soldier named Mars.
Okay.
And it's kind of like a lifeline. It's practical.
Yeah, in a world that's, still trying to rebuild.
Yeah, makes sense. And then we have Girl Boss Inn, a haven for new players kind of entering this world. And it's not just like a place to stay, it's a connection point to the Nether Highway,
Right.
which I guess is kind of like the internet of this realm.
Exactly.
So very important. Then there's Elsewhere, this lush area. Sounds very nice and idyllic, but it's kind of dominated by this looming void spire, which kind of hints at a darker side.
Yeah.
And then there's the floating village, which is home to the mysterious wyvern, who we'll be talking a lot about today.
Of course.
Okay, so we've got our stage set. Now let's meet our players. We've got Goblin, who, despite her name as the super friendly seamstress, loves books. She's
Very trusting, almost too trusting.
almost too trusting, yeah, and that kind of comes back to bite her a little bit later.
Right.
And then we have the wyvern, secretive, paranoid, and very much affected by warping.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Another resident of the Heartlands, Emmy, she steals from the wyvern's floating village, which kind of triggers this whole chain of events.
Emmy's always got to be stirring the pot.
Yeah.
So how does the wyvern react to this?
He's obviously furious, and his paranoia is, amplified by the warping.
Right.
So he hires Mars, the M4 soldier who established the drifts, to investigate and also, demand payment from Emmy.
Okay, so Mars enters the picture here,
Yeah.
and I'm guessing things escalate pretty quickly from here.
They do. The wyvern becomes convinced that Goblin's been replaced by a shape-shifting entity called the Face Stealer,
Oh, no.
despite her insistence that she's innocent.
Talk about mistaken identity.
Right.
Yeah.
So driven by this fear and distrust, the wyvern ends up killing Goblin.
Oh, my gosh.
It's the first death on the server,
Wow.
witnessed by a completely stunned Mars.
So right off the bat, we see that the war's trauma, this warping, has just really twisted the wyvern's perception of reality.
Totally.
It's tragic, but it just kind of sets this really dark tone for this whole chapter.
It does. It shows how these consequences linger
Right.
and how fear and paranoia can really poison relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what happens after Goblin's death?
Well, so she doesn't actually stay dead, right? She's a polymortal.
Oh, that's right.
She has 3 lives, so she is revived.
Right.
But the experience leaves her, deeply shaken.
Yeah, I bet.
Understandably so. So she moves out of the floating village. Trust is broken.
Yeah.
And around this time, another key player enters the scene, Nixia,
Okay.
also known as Nyx.
Mm.
She's a skilled blacksmith and Mars's closest friend. She arrives in the Heartlands and has this unsettling encounter with the Wyvern,
Oh.
unaware that they have a shared past.
Oh, a mysterious past.
Yeah.
That's always going to complicate things.
Exactly. And meanwhile, news of Goblin's death has reached Emmy and her friends, Annie and Julie.
Who already had their suspicions about the Wyvern. Nyxaya, wanting to keep Goblin safe, gives her a full set of netherite armor. It's a really sweet gesture of friendship and protection.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, that's what friends are for.
Right.
So how do things progress from here?
So in the midst of all this tension, Goblin tries to play peacemaker. She organizes this grand feast, the banquet, intending to bring everyone together and kind of ease these growing divisions, but it backfires spectacularly.
Oh no, what happens?
The residents of Elsewhere, still wary of the Wyvern, leave early.
Okay.
Nyxaya and the Wyvern have another tense interaction,
Right.
highlighting these unanswered questions about their connection. And it's clear that the banquet, although well-intentioned, just fails to bridge that divide.
Sometimes trying to force reconciliation just makes things more awkward.
Mm.
Okay, so the community remains fractured.
Yeah.
Where does the story go from there?
Well, unfortunately, it takes a turn for the worse.
The Wyvern's warping intensifies,
Okay.
leading to even more erratic behavior and manipulation. It's like he's spiraling down this dark path,
Yeah.
consumed by this desire to reopen the portal to the end, which, you know, only a polymortal can do.
Right.
And he becomes fixated on Goblin once more,
Oh, no.
leading to her second and ultimately her third death.
This is brutal.
It is. Stripped of her final life, Goblin returns as a spirit known as S.
So we've got escalating tensions, a vengeful spirit, and a Wyvern on this dangerous mission. What else could go wrong?
Well, around this time, a new character, Ophion, arrives in Elsewhere.
Okay.
He begins construction on this massive structure called the Void Spire,
Right.
which casts a literal and metaphorical shadow over the community.
That does not sound good.
No.
What's Ophion's deal?
He's shrouded in mystery, but his actions suggest he has his own agenda.
Okay.
And it's definitely not aligned with, like, peace and harmony. And to add to the intrigue, a shape-shifting clay golem named Canvas appears and befriends S.
Oh.
It's this really unlikely pairing, but it hints at the unpredictable alliances forming.
Right. Like who knew a vengeful spirit and a clay golem would be besties?
Totally. And meanwhile, Annie, Emmy, and Julie, they're trying to figure out what's going on with the Wyvern's warping, hoping to find a cure. They encounter Nyxay during their search, and this kind of tentative friendship forms between them.
Okay.
Based on their shared concern for those affected by the war.
Right. So we're seeing these little pockets of hope and connection amidst this darkness.
Absolutely.
Which is nice.
Yeah. But before any solutions can be found, the Wyvern's true intentions are revealed.
Oh, okay.
Which sets the stage for this dramatic showdown.
Okay. The stakes are officially raised.
Yeah.
Before we dive into all of that, can you remind us about Nyxaya's mysterious past and her connection to the Wyvern?
Of course.
Yeah.
So Nyxaya's origins are deeply tied to this shadowy military initiative called Project Cygnix,
Right.
which aimed to create super soldiers.
Right.
In fact, she is the prototype Cygnix soldier,
Oh.
susceptible to verbal commands that can override her free will.
So she's not just a skilled blacksmith, she's a potential weapon.
Exactly.
And that's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, and it makes her a target for those who want to control her and those who want to protect her.
So her connection to the Wyvern?
It's hinted that they have a past relationship, but the details remain unclear. It's a mystery that will unravel as the story progresses.
Okay, I'm sensing some unresolved tension.
For sure. And this connection just adds a whole other layer of complexity to their interaction.
This is already so much to process.
Mm-hmm.
A vengeful spirit, a corrupted Wyvern, this mysterious new arrival, and now a prototype super soldier with a hidden past.
Yeah.
I'm hooked.
And we're just getting started. The story takes even more twists and turns from here. And the consequences of these early events will reverberate throughout the entire saga.
All right, listeners, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll delve into the trial of the Wyvern, the shocking reveal of Nyxaya's true nature, and the devastating climax of Chapter 1. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into cottagecore communism.
So last time we were talking about all this craziness with the Wyvern and Goblin. And
Things were really heating up in the Heartlands with the Wyvern.
He's just spiraling.
Spiraling down this destructive path.
Yeah, and Goblin, or S as we should say,
Right.
is seeking revenge.
Right.
And then we had this whole new element introduced with Nixai,
Yeah.
with her connection to Project Cygnus and the Wyvern's past. So where do things go from here?
So the situation kind of reaches a boiling point with the trial of the Wyvern.
Okay.
Annie, believing he's too dangerous to be left unchecked, orchestrates this trial to determine his fate.
Okay. That's a pretty bold move on her part.
But I guess with everything that's happened, she feels like she has no other choice.
Yeah.
So what does this trial actually look like? It's not like a courtroom drama or anything, right?
Definitely not your typical courtroom. It's more of a community gathering
Okay.
where accusations are flung, evidence is presented, tensions run high.
Yeah, I bet.
S and the Wyvern, they try to deflect blame onto Annie and Emmy,
Oh, really?
painting them as the real instigators of the conflict.
Classic villain tactic.
Exactly.
Just turn the tables, play the victim. But Annie and Emmy, I'm assuming they've got some tricks up their sleeve.
They do. They've been gathering evidence of the Wyvern's wrongdoings, hoping to expose his true nature to the community.
Okay.
And remember, Annie is a really smart strategist.
Yeah, she is.
And she stacked the jury in her favor,
Ooh, sneaky.
ensuring a guilty verdict for the Wyvern.
Okay, but even with a guilty verdict, can they actually enforce any consequences?
That's where things get really complicated.
Okay.
The trial descends into chaos when the verdict is announced.
Oh, no.
Annie, who initially sought imprisonment for the Wyvern,
Okay.
is overcome with this mix of fear and anger and gives Mars the signal to execute him.
Whoa, hold on. So it goes from a trial to an execution? That's a huge escalation.
It is. It's a pivotal moment in the story, highlighting just how intense this conflict has become.
Yeah?
And the difficult choices these characters are forced to make.
Yeah.
The Wyvern, realizing his life is in danger, tries to flee, with Mars in hot pursuit.
Okay.
Cess, desperate to intervene, joins the chaotic chase, which leads all the way into the Nether.
So this is like an action movie now.
Totally.
This is wild.
It all culminates with Mars cornering the Wyvern and delivering the final blow.
Okay.
Cess witnesses the whole thing.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I can't imagine seeing your friend kill the person that wronged you, even if that person was not a good guy.
You're tough.
So what happens next? What's the fallout from this?
The emotional fallout is pretty significant. Annie retreats to the sanctuary,
Oh, yeah.
leaving behind this trail of devastation and simmering resentment.
Okay, so we got the Wyvern dead, S consumed by vengeance,
Right.
and Annie just reeling from everything that's happened.
Yeah.
So what happens next?
Well, remember that little detail about Nixai being the prototype Cygnus soldier?
The one susceptible to verbal commands.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
It turns out that S, having inherited the Wyvern's knowledge, sees an opportunity.
No, this can't be good.
It's not.
What does she do?
She manipulates Nixai into this seemingly harmless meeting with Mars under the guise of trying to ease tensions.
Okay.
But with a single word, Cygnus, S triggers this devastating chain of events.
Wait, so you're telling me that Nixia, Mars's best friend,
Yeah.
is forced to kill him?
It's a heart-wrenching twist,
That's brutal.
showcasing the manipulation and trauma that permeate this world.
Oh, my God.
Nixai, horrified by her actions, consumed by guilt, begs S to end her life.
Oh, no.
And tragically, S complies.
This is just, wow. The emotional fallout from this must be immense.
It is. And we see these events just ripple outward, fracturing the community even further.
Yeah, this isn't just about one death. This is about broken trust and deep scars left behind.
Exactly.
So how do Mars and Nixia's friends cope with this?
It's a long and painful process, but amidst the grief, there's a glimmer of hope.
Okay, what's that?
Remember how polymortals have multiple lives?
Yeah.
It turns out both Nixia and Mars are polymortals.
Wait, they come back.
They do.
That's incredible, but I can't imagine it's just a simple happy ending after everything that's happened.
You're right. Their reunion is far from simple.
Yeah.
The trauma of their deaths lingers, and their relationship is forever changed by the events that transpired.
Right. Alive, but clearly not unscathed.
Yeah.
What about S? Is she satisfied now that she's gotten revenge?
Unfortunately, no. Her resentment runs deep,
Okay.
and she continues to lurk around the sanctuary,
Oh, no.
adding to the unease that permeates the Heartlands. And then there's Ophion. Remember him?
Oh, yeah. Guy with the void spire. I have a feeling he's not just going to sit back and watch all this unfold.
You're absolutely right. He's been quietly making plans, and they don't bode well for anyone.
Okay. What's he got planned?
He's got his sights set on power, and he's willing to manipulate anyone and everyone to achieve his goals. A new wrinkle appears. Mysterious pages begin washing up on the shores of the Heartlands.
Mysterious pages. You know I love a good cryptic message.
Me too.
What do they say?
They contain clues that hint at Annie's worst nightmare becoming reality. The Wyvern's survival.
No way.
Ugh.
But we saw him die. Mars killed him.
It's a shocking revelation.
Yeah.
Even for us as seasoned lore enthusiasts.
Yeah.
It turns out there's more to death and resurrection in this world than meets the eye.
Okay, I'm officially on the edge of my seat.
Good.
So how does everyone react to this news of the Wyvern's potential return?
It depends on the individual.
Oh.
For Annie, it's a confirmation of her deepest fears, pushing her to make a desperate deal with Ophion.
What kind of deal?
She agrees to take a potion regimen,
Okay.
provided by Ophion,
Okay.
that he claims will cure her warping. In exchange, she promises to help him trap S and use her to track down the Wyvern.
Okay, but why would she trust him? He's clearly not a reliable source.
Desperate times call for desperate measures.
Yeah, I guess so.
She's terrified of what the Wyvern might do if he's truly alive and potentially still under the Ender Dragon's control. She's willing to take a risk even if it means aligning herself with a known manipulator.
And how does this potion regiment work out for her?
Unfortunately, it's a trick.
Oh.
The potions, instead of curing her, actually worsen her warping,
Oh, no.
making her even more susceptible to his influence.
This guy's the worst.
Yeah, he's really loving this situation.
So what does he do next?
Nixay.
Oh, no. But why her? I mean, besides the fact that she's awesome.
Well, remember her connection to Project Cygnus, that ability to be controlled by verbal commands.
Oh.
Ophion sees that as a powerful tool to exploit.
So basically, he wants to turn her into his own puppet
Exactly.
to help him seize control of the Heartlands.
He wants to use her as his spy, his bodyguard, his informant.
Okay.
He wants to manipulate her into believing that she's serving a greater purpose, when in reality she's just a pawn in his game.
But Nixie is no pushover. I can't imagine her just blindly following his orders.
You're right. Initially, Ophion does manage to control her for a short while.
Okay.
He uses her to gather information and manipulate events behind the scenes.
Right.
But thankfully, Annie, Emmy, and Julie realize the danger and they step in to help.
Okay, those three. They're like a little Scooby-Doo gang.
Uh-huh. I like that.
Uncovering mysteries, saving the day.
Totally. They manage to identify loopholes in the commands that Ophion has placed on her,
Okay.
and they ultimately break his control over her.
That's great.
But instead of severing ties with Ophion completely,
Okay.
Nixia makes a really bold decision.
Let me guess.
Yeah.
She decides to play double agent.
Exactly.
That's risky, but I feel like that's totally something she would do.
Right. She volunteers to become a double agent,
Okay.
feeding false information to Ophion,
Okay.
while secretly working with Annie and her friends to thwart his plans.
Okay, so talk about turning the tables. But I imagine spying on someone as cunning as Ophion is no walk in the park.
It's incredibly dangerous
to
protect her. Annie even implants new commands,
Oh, wow.
ensuring her loyalty to their cause.
Okay, so they're taking this seriously.
So he decides to make a spectacle of it.
Okay.
He orchestrates this elaborate dinner party, inviting everyone in the Heartlands,
Okay.
and uses it as an opportunity to publicly assert his dominance over...
A dinner party seems a little tame for someone who just turned someone into a void vessel.
Right, but it's all part of his calculated manipulation. He wants to create a spectacle, instill fear and obedience in anyone who might question his authority.
Okay.
And to really drive the point home, he forces Annie, who's still under his influence,
All right.
to attack Nixeo.
Oh, my gosh. Using Annie to hurt her friend, that's just messed up.
It is. It's a calculated move to exploit their bond,
Right.
to break her spirit and ensure her complete loyalty.
Ophion is ruthless.
He is.
So what happens during this twisted dinner party? Does anyone try to stop him?
So Mars is there, and he's deeply disturbed by what he's witnessing,
Okay.
but he knows that any direct confrontation would just put Nixea in even greater danger.
Right.
It's a heartbreaking situation, watching someone you care about be manipulated and abused, but being powerless to intervene.
Yeah, that's awful. What about Canvas? Vess's friend. It seems like he would be the type to help.
He is horrified by Ophion's actions.
Okay.
But there's a complication. He's bound by some kind of connection to a being known as Blue,
Okay.
which prevents him from directly harming Ophion.
So basically everyone's hands are tied.
Pretty much.
And he just gets away with this.
He does.
Unbelievable.
The dinner party, which quickly becomes known as the coronation, ends with Ophion declaring himself king
Oh, no.
and taking Nixay, Annie, and Goblin to his secluded fortress, Castle Noctis.
Oh, boy. This does not sound good. So what's it like for Nixai at the castle?
It's a nightmare. Ophion and goblins subject her and Annie to horrific torture,
Oh, no.
both physical and psychological, in an attempt to break their spirits and ensure their complete obedience.
This is so heavy. I know it's fictional, but it's still hard to hear about this kind of abuse.
Yeah.
So do they ever manage to fight back?
They do. Even in the face of unimaginable cruelty, their spirits don't break.
Okay.
They find strength in their shared suffering,
Yeah.
and they begin to plan their escape, plotting their revenge against Ophion.
Before we get into that, though, I have to know, how is Nixay handling this whole double agent situation? It can't be easy pretending to be on his side.
It's taking a toll on her both physically and mentally.
Yeah.
The constant stress and pressure of living a lie, coupled with the trauma of her past.
Right.
It's all wearing her down.
Yeah.
And to make matters worse, her connection to Vulcan, her deceased blacksmith mentor,
Ryan.
starts to resurface in unsettling ways.
Vulcan's supposed to be dead?
He is. But remember that soul fragment that attached to her after his death?
Uh-huh.
Well under the immense pressure of her current situation,
Right.
that fragment begins to assert itself,
Right.
causing her to switch personalities with Vulcan in random outbursts.
Oh my gosh, so it's like he's possessing her.
In a way, yes.
That's creepy.
And these outbursts become more frequent and more intense,
Right.
adding another line of complexity to her already fragile mental state.
I can only imagine the strain this is putting on her relationship with Mars. He must be worried sick.
He is. But despite his concern, he trusts her completely and gives her the space she needs to navigate this really difficult situation.
Well, that's good. At least they have each other for support.
Yeah. But how do they even begin to challenge someone as powerful as Ophion?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
We'll remember that mysterious figure wearing a wither skeleton head.
Yeah.
He finally makes his move,
Okay.
and it turns out to be the Wyvern's ghost.
What? So he really did survive death.
Apparently so.
But if he's a ghost, how can he possibly pose a threat?
While his ghostly form does limit his physical abilities,
Okay.
he still possesses his cunning and knowledge.
Right.
He approaches with a proposition, a trade, in exchange for canvas.
Interesting. So the Wyvern, or Malice as he calls himself,
Huh?
is still scheming even in death.
Exactly.
Wow. So what does Ophion think of this deal?
It's complicated. Malice sees canvas as a valuable asset in his own mysterious plans.
Okay.
Ophion, swayed by Goblin's desire to have her friend back,
Right.
agrees to the exchange.
Okay, so Annie's free.
She is.
That's good news. What about Nixay, though?
She's still trapped in Castle Noctis,
Oh, no.
enduring Ophion's cruelty. But with Annie back in the outside world, the plan to take down Ophion really gains momentum.
Okay, good. So how does it all play out? Do they manage to defeat him and rescue Nixaya?
It's a long and complicated road filled with alliances, betrayals,
Yeah.
and unexpected twists.
Mm-hmm.
The final confrontation takes place during the summit,
Okay.
a meeting organized to discuss how to deal with Ophion.
Okay.
It's a tense and dramatic showdown,
I bet.
but just as the community gathers to decide his fate, an unexpected event occurs.
Uh-oh. This sounds like things are about to get really interesting. What happens?
Canvas, after this really deep philosophical conversation with Ophion about the nature of humanity,
Oh.
makes a shocking decision.
Don't leave me hanging.
He kills Ophion.
Whoa! I did not see that coming. So the big bad is defeated by a Klee golem having an existential crisis.
It's a surprising turn of events,
Yeah.
highlighting the unpredictable nature of this world
Right.
and the power of individual choice.
Okay.
But the victory is bittersweet.
How so?
Canvas, fatally wounded during the confrontation, dies alongside Ophion.
Oh, wow. What a powerful ending to Chapter 2. Sounds like there's a lot to unpack here. Sacrifice, the complexities of good and evil,
Yeah,
the enduring power of friendship.
absolutely. And the ripple effects of these events will continue to be felt throughout the rest of the saga.
Listeners, if you're as hooked on this lore as we are, be sure to check out our next deep dive, where we'll unravel even more of the cottagecore communism universe.
Yes.
Until then, keep those theories coming and happy exploring.